I would like to say a few words here regarding our course schedule for this period of time. Tomorrow, the classic of filial piety will be taught. Then we will have 2 sessions on the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras. After that, we will study the precious garland of the Supreme Path. As for the schedule for next week, 2 sessions of the Vimalakirti Sutra will be taught. They will be on Monday and Tuesday. Then on Wednesday and Thursday, there will be no class. On Friday, I will teach 1 session, the final session of the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras on the 13th. Regarding our course on the Vimalakirti Sutra, next week, specifically on the 9th and 10th, after July 9th and 10th are finished, there will be a break of nearly 1 month without class. That is to say, on Monday, August 6th. The teaching will resume at that time. Originally, I was not going to teach in the second half of this year. I had intended to go away for a while. Later, those plans changed, so I returned to teach. This outcome is actually quite good. Recently, I feel that things are going quite well. And the audience for this Vimalakirti Sutra has been very stable. I think the people here with me should be steady. Of course, there may be some here who never attend class at all. It does not matter if you do not attend my class. But if there are those who do not attend any other master's class either, I hope the managers in each district will look into this. Are there those who have not attended class for a long time? If there are, I hope we will do a count at the middle or at the end of the year. These people may have some other motives. Because staying here without studying, hearing, or practicing, while just staying here, surely implies some other purpose. If you have any suspicions that a person may not have been attending class, please ask them briefly about it. They might have come here without attending a single class. If they are living here, we should note that housing here is very limited. Temporary residence is also not permitted as well. Originally during the summer here, for a month or 2, there are sometimes temporary stays. But this kind of person cannot remain here in Larungar. Not attending my class is fine. But if they do not attend any master's class and still stay here, they are either doing business or doing some other kind of secret work. Beyond these, I cannot imagine what else it could be. So among the permanent residents at Larunga, everyone should observe the situation carefully. Then, as for the Vimalakirti Sutra, there are 2 more sessions remaining before a break from July 10th to August 6th. There will be no class during that interval. Why am I saying this? Because many of you, during the summer, may have various things to do and plans for your own time. If I let everyone know in advance, since some people nowadays really like to travel, you can buy plane tickets and book hotels early, and even look for some tourist destinations. This is quite understandable. So I am letting everyone know fairly clearly. Then, regarding the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, we still have 3 sessions left. That is to say, on the 13th, we will do a simple Tsok feast offering, completing the 4-year course. This is something to feel very happy about. If, among those listening to the Vimalakirti Sutra, you have not been attending the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras classes, you are still welcome to join for the last few sessions. Throughout these many sessions as a whole, whether it is the conditions for hearing or the merit, the aspiration or the circumstances, or even if your faith and so on were not complete, for the last 2 or 3 sessions, if you have the time, it would be fine to attend. With regard to this Dharma of Maitreya Bodhisattva, even though it may not have been completed in full, and the opportunity to finish the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras was missed, if there is the condition to attend the final sessions, when Maitreya Buddha appears in the world, you can also say that many tens of thousands of years ago, although the aspiration to study everything was not complete, I did attend a few sessions later on. Stories like this are common in Buddhist sutras. In a certain era, even without other conditions, having attended only 1 session and having formed a single Dharma connection, due to that condition, one later encounters a Buddha, a Bodhisattva, or a spiritual teacher. There are such stories. So I think regarding the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, I am very happy and very grateful. The ornament of the Mahayana Sutras originally, for those without much enthusiasm for theoretical study, is rather dry. But even so, we still came together to study. After everyone generated this sincere aspiration, many people have already completed the entire course. So I am very satisfied with the audience for the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras. I am also quite pleased with the audience for the Vimalakirti Sutra. Since we have just begun, we have only had about a dozen sessions so far. As for how many more sessions there will be in the future, we do not know the exact number yet. However, reasonably speaking, the course should not be excessively long. Today, I also spoke with some Dharma friends who listen to the teachings in foreign languages. Their attendance has always been very stable. This shows that our collective enthusiasm for the Dharma is actually quite good. This is the first matter I wanted to discuss. Now for the second matter, I hope that young Tibetan people, teachers, and those who only know Chinese but do not know Tibetan, as a portion of them are also attending these classes, whether online or in person. I hope you will all study the sutras and shastras earnestly. Regarding the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, so many people of different ethnicities and skin colors are studying them. If you are of Tibetan ethnicity yourself, yet do not understand Tibetan culture and Buddhism, that would truly be a great pity. Therefore, I especially hope that Tibetan teachers and students, including those students who have just graduated but have not yet found a job or formally started working, will use this interval to attend some religious classes and study traditional culture. I feel this is very necessary. Many people nowadays might only learn skills to make money. If one has no other ideals beyond this, that is not a very good way to live. So it is not just about listening to courses in Chinese. If you understand the Tibetan language, recently at our academy, Khenpo Sodargye has been teaching the words of my perfect teacher in Tibetan. It seems he has already taught a few sessions. He plans to continue this teaching for a year or two. He will likely teach for several months each year. Here at Larunga, for the Tibetan monastics and lay people in various departments, I encourage them to attend as well. I also hope the heads of their departments will grant permission to adjust their work schedules accordingly. Otherwise, if the class falls right during work hours, receiving the oral transmission might be difficult. Fortunately, many of our departments have already given permission. I am very grateful for your supportive attitude. While I have the authority to compel such changes, I choose not to do so. When you are willing to accept these suggestions, it makes me feel very pleased. I do not have any other personal agenda. However, I believe that here at Larungar, regardless of the department in which one serves, this study benefits not only one's conduct, but also many other aspects of life. More importantly, on an inner level, regardless of ethnicity or identity, it is crucial that everyone receives the benefits of the Dharma. This point is very important. So I hope all of you who are listening will earnestly, properly, and in accordance with the Dharma, complete this transmission. Everyone should understand the hardships the past masters endured for their practice. Everyone should be very clear about this. This is the second matter I wanted to raise today. Now for the third matter. Some people, including Dharma friends in the tantric classes, have encountered masters from the same lineage who offer special dzogchen empowerments. In such cases, our tantric teachings are also very complete. I am not suggesting that other transmission are improper. However, we are very familiar with certain lineage masters, and some of our teachings, including certain empowerments and other related matters, are directly connected to His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. Of course, the requirements may vary from one master to another. I am thinking especially of the tantric classes in some cities recently. Some students have already finished the preliminary practices. Once those practices are completed, they still need a dzogchen empowerment from a qualified spiritual teacher. If they receive that, a portion of our students will advance each year and enter the tantric classes directly. In that case, if all necessary conditions are met, one can receive authentic empowerments. Afterward, the tantric teachings can be practiced properly and according to the Dharma. Regarding the situation at the Larunga, when the time comes, we can further communicate with everyone on certain matters. Whether we are holding Dharma assemblies, transmitting tantric teachings, or transmitting exoteric teachings, everything must be done properly and in accordance with the Dharma. A human body is difficult to obtain, and enduring some hardships for practice is very important. For the sake of the Dharma, although we cannot be like the great masters of the past who traveled to India to seek the teachings, or to the Tibetan region or elsewhere to find the Dharma, including Lord Atisha, who traveled to Indonesia to seek the Dharma there, seeking teachings on bodhicitta and secret mantrayana, we might not necessarily have the capacity for such austerity now. We may lack the endurance for such hardships. But at the very least, for the sake of hearing the true Dharma, we should still make some effort. In this regard, even within the various volunteer departments, we should try our best to ensure that for the purpose of truly hearing the Dharma and truly practicing, we can work within our relevant regulations to grant everyone a certain degree of flexibility or provide some convenience. This is something our departments should continue to do in the future. I am also bringing this matter up here. Then, as I mentioned just now, the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras will be completed next week. Regarding the Vimalakirti Sutra, there might be a break. Originally, we had indeed planned to postpone it until August, but for special reasons, we continued for another period. After next week passes, perhaps for a while, my classes might be scattered here and there. I may teach some reviews of earlier courses or other subjects. But the specific details will be announced at that time. This is one matter. There is also another matter. For the Dharma friends here at Larungar, after the class ends in a little while, I have other things I would like to say to everyone. After reciting the King of Aspiration prayers, please stay and listen. We often say here that next is our session for oral examinations. In 20 minutes, we will dedicate the merit together, Amitabha. So after the King of Aspiration prayers, I will say a few words to everyone. Now let us begin. First, I will recite the Tibetan transmission of the Vimalakirti Sutra. The Tibetan lineage transmission is also very important. I hope everyone, when receiving it, does not feel that they cannot understand it. One might think it has been recited for hours anyway, so it does not matter if I arrive a bit late. Actually, such an attitude is not very good. Looking at the world today, such transmissions of Tibetan Buddhism are truly very rare and precious. When we travel to Western countries, some dedicated practitioners and scientists there especially love to attend empowerments and transmissions. To attend a transmission, they make work arrangements 3 or 4 years in advance. For a particular Dharma transmission or instruction, they still make a very great effort. Even in the Han region, people are now beginning to take transmissions and empowerment seriously. In fact, taking these things seriously is very important. However, one should not be too one-sided. If you only value these things and attend a transmission every day, but never contemplate the meaning of the Dharma, that is also not a very good approach. Now next, I will recite the transmission for everyone. Mahakasyapa has not finished reciting. He has already moved on to Subhuti.
Tene Jondan de Sedang Damba Wochung Chimbola Gapsar, Wochung, Kulitsamba Chimar me Pichapi, Natanjer Song Shigu, Wochung Chimbi, Sorwa, Jondan de Daga Kivatamba Ti, Chun Zhejiang, and Chur Muchu.
He says that he does not want to go either.
Techilat Jena, Jondan de Daka, Mumber Sarva Tir Signa, Young Bachuncher Chimbo, Lazamba Chimame Pechabi, Kim the Surnum Lamshibada. Lazamba Chimame Pechabe, the Daka Honzen Sarne, Zib Zambo, Ganten, Dirkichi, Surto. Sumba Ramjur. Ramjur. Near to a cosmo.
How are you following the Tibetan text?
Jondan de Dirkivatambati, Jonzam, Chur Muchu. Techilat Jena, Dakum Mumber Sarati, Chigna. Guru Chand of Sornim Lamchine, Lizamet, Tumami Petraba, Term Chine, Daglan Dirkichi, Chogo, and Dirter, Simchin Chimbo, Kim Kurte, Guru Nam Kim Nansen, Joanna, Zamba, Gochon Chimbo, Shambala, Soba, Chuchi by Injip, Zamba, Gochon Chimbo, Chumia, Banilaniba, Shago, T. Tamchit, Simchim Tamchil of Samti, Sornim Zaru Shago, Zeme per Zip Zaru Shago, Zanji Run Zamba, Zari, Zarish, Kyo Surnim Landor Shago, Chung Stomber Shinji Latte, Chungdan Jibra Shago, Kivetamba, Kibata, Vedmit, Yons, member of Shavi Shird, Chungchirdan Jibra Shago.
Here it is a bit different from the Chinese version.
Sargye Jirgi Chochi Chim the Roar Shago. Malimbi Sornim Blanc Shago. A Milong Dom Sombra Zignam Latago, Churchadan Janam Lamiando, London Sombra Chernam Namo. Number Rigba me per ro nam nyang ici la rigba me pe riksha nam la rigba shawo jimi che number rigbe chur nam la rigba shawo gang da ka ngubo dang janji ngubo me pa na member wa go gang member wa te na jever man jero garte ne tan go chon chimbo logni de gelle manda ja number tharwa jet Getting la yang nyobaran jigchang log bim nyambani ki yang tag bim nyambani lan jigbar shawo surni mchig jang semchen tamchil la jin jang sangje tamchil la phagba tamchil la yang urte pherne jang do dak za wa tawa chirtir nyomong dom chiba yang mayen nyomong ba dom charwa yang mayen ba tertir za go nyambar jigba yang mayen deba langba yang mayen bar za go khora la magne par nyangal lan deba yang magne par za go zumba kyut gang tak surnu jimbar shiba te tak la mjeve chewar yang manjir mjeve chungwar yang manjir jangwar yang manjir chat tak yang manjir sangji shagba yang tak bar jo yushir de nyantur jora yang tak bar jor mafsha go neftan gochong chimbo tertir yirnkur gi surnim ton yobar zago ji chirte Jordan de dagla chuftan banda tune ngumsir de yerde shanchu sanwa tamchilla shimtsoro kimne ne bala yang dirta wir pobadan danna sijiki lana me bayang de bur zobe shanchip de simmab gi nyamne de tsinjin dagki semchin nam yang tagba chimbu malag bar nyantu gi tagba da rangsan gi tagba shungunchun mapsudo Jordan de ti la de dagje ke tamba ti chun jang shiver muchu
Now let us discuss the Vimalakirti Sutra below. Regarding the teaching of the Vimalakirti Sutra, we are now on chapter 3, the Disciples chapter. Within chapter 3, the Disciples chapter, we discussed how the layman Vimalakirti was ill at that time. He is a layman, but his level of realization is very high. In fact, his realization far surpasses the Shravaka vehicle. It also surpasses certain vehicles of the exoteric Mahayana tradition. One could say it is indistinguishable from the high realizations of the Tantric or Chan traditions. This point in our process of study should also be quite apparent. Those with wisdom should be able to appreciate it. I also hope that all of you who listen to the Vimalakirti Sutra will not simply listen to my 1-hour session and then just leave. It should not be like that. Afterward, it would be best to read some commentaries on your own. Whether in English, Chinese, or Tibetan, teachings by others can also serve as references. If there are other commentaries available, including Master Sengjiao's annotations mentioned before, Master Kuiji's annotations, as well as the Tang Dynasty translation and Jitian's version, cross-referencing them is a very good approach to study. I think the progress we are making here is quite good. Even in the evening after class, although I have an enormous amount of work to do, including today, there is truly a great deal going on at the academy and the monastery. There are morning meetings, noon meetings, and afternoon meetings. Truly, the time for preparing my lessons is very short. I only have enough time to briefly go over the text. Despite having many things to do, I am still making a great effort. I have personally reviewed many Tibetan and Chinese texts for the parts that I do not understand. I also have others look at foreign language versions to see what they say. I'm also asking questions to clarify points. Then, after our class in the evening, some classes also have tutorials the following day. On the day of the class, we are also discussing and exploring the text together. I can see that many people are studying quite carefully. Perhaps one day this sutra will be completely finished. When that day comes and it is completed, many people will then finally know exactly what the Vimalakirti Sutra says. It will leave a very deep impression on everyone. Some people, after studying such a blessed sutra, will truly develop a definitive certainty, whether toward the teachings on emptiness or the non-dual Dharma door. This will be an irreversible, definitive certainty. This is something I think we all very much need. We do not need to just sit here on the surface and say we are attending a class. We are all very busy. Especially now with such advanced technology, people are getting busier. Everyone is always so busy they have no time to eat. There is no time to sleep. Even going to the bathroom is difficult. For some people, this is truly the case. Especially in the East and the West, one sometimes sees people buried in endless busyness. At such times, freeing up some time for study is a way of being responsible to oneself. Everyone truly takes the Dharma we transmit very seriously. Actually, for every teaching, the level of importance each person gives it is key. This point is very important. It is not just because you attended one session, or because you studied a book, or because you read a book. Those facts are not particularly important. What is more important in our daily study process is aligning our own thoughts with the sutras and shastras. This is a very profound wisdom from over 2,500 years ago. Even now, throughout the entire world, many wise people are exploring this very topic. Therefore, for those of us here, hearing such Dharma is very meaningful and valuable. If you just hear it and let it remain in a book, or merely listen to it without reflection, then it has no meaning. As I said the other day, your attitude while listening is also very important. Unless there are special circumstances, you should free up these 1 or 2 hours. By doing so, you will certainly receive blessings in the transmission. You will also come to understand the meaning of the Dharma, because the Dharma has such a profound meaning. Even for those with wisdom, it is not so easy to understand. For those without wisdom, if the mind is scattered and the body is occupied with all kinds of other things, then there is no way to enter the profound meaning of the Dharma. Now let us proceed with the teaching. Today we will only cover one story. Originally I had prepared the stories of Mahakasyapa and Subhuti, but it seems we may not be able to finish both. What I just recited in the transmission was only Mahakasyapa's story. Yesterday, the others had already been asked. Shakyamuni Buddha's two most prominent disciples, Sariputra and Mahamodgalyayana, who are foremost in wisdom and supernatural powers, were asked to go and visit that elder layman, but that elder layman is very formidable. The ones foremost in wisdom and supernatural powers, I see you are bringing flowers again. Yes, these are very fragrant. However, we must not be attached to fragrance. Otherwise, Vimalakirti will soon tell us not to be discriminatory. Next, because the two monastics speaking of those two monastics, foremost in wisdom and supernatural powers, were asked to go and visit that elder layman, but neither of them dared to go. One reason was that while teaching the Dharma, he received criticism from Vimalakirti, so now he does not dare to go. The other, while in meditation, also received a lesson from Vimalakirti, so now he does not dare to go either. Today, continuing from there, Venerable Mahakasyapa, foremost in ascetic practices, and Subhuti, foremost in understanding emptiness, were each sent separately. Actually, the previous two were foremost in supernatural powers and wisdom. Now, from the perspective of the Pratimoksa precepts, the great elder Mahakasyapa maintained extremely pure discipline. Later on, he consistently practiced the Duttaguna. Regarding the 12 Duttaguna practices, he would always sit beneath trees. He never lay down at night practicing this kind of austerity. In total, there are 12 kinds of these austerities. As the representative of such asceticism, his main practice included wearing robes made from discarded rags. He also ate very simple food. He was the primary representative of these ascetic practices. So the Buddha sent Venerable Mahakasyapa to represent the ascetic tradition. He was the one chosen to go. Then, speaking of Subhuti, he is mainly foremost in understanding emptiness. In Mahayana Buddhism, including our Diamond Sutra and many of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, there are many dialogues between the Buddha and Subhuti. He is a bhiksu who is a dedicated Mahayana practitioner. He also represents a specific quality. He has attained great accomplishment in the realization of emptiness. He is that kind of monastic. But both of these disciples also received the teachings of Vimalakirti, or rather they received his pith instructions. Some people nowadays say The master gave me a pith instruction, meaning that the master gave them some criticism. Are you going to give me another pith instruction? Some of our volunteer supporters here might say, please do not be angry. But if you want to give me a pith instruction, that is also fine. I have been waiting for it. In this context, a pith instruction refers to criticism. So Vimalakirti also gave pith instructions to the two venerable ones we mentioned. Those who come after will also receive these instructions. However, the two cases have slightly different characteristics. One relates to conduct. Venerable Mahakasyapa was very proper and followed the Dharma in his conduct. He is like some monastics of the Theravada tradition today. His deportment was especially dignified. He was content with little, had few desires, and practiced pure asceticism. He was that kind of practitioner. As for Subhuti, he is foremost in understanding emptiness. In his dialogues with Manjushri Bodhisattva and the Buddha, he showed that he was not particularly attached. When Subhuti often went to receive alms, he would go to the homes of the wealthy. Most of his patrons were big bosses. Some were even from wealthy second-generation families. They were the great elders. As for the great elder Mahakasyapa, out of compassion for the poor, he wanted to plant seeds of virtue and form a good connection with them. So for his patrons, he preferred to visit the poor to seek alms. So for Subhuti and the others, one focused on conduct while the other focused on the view. Because Subhuti has realized emptiness, we can say he has a very high and elevated view. As we discussed before, in the Nyingma tradition, the view is mainly based on the emptiness view of Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. The conduct is mainly based on the Pratimoksa of Master Shantarakshita. As the saying goes, one relates to the view, specifically the Mahayana emptiness view. The other relates to the Sravaka tradition, acting as the representative of pure conduct. Now let us first discuss Venerable Mahakasyapa. The Buddha spoke to the great Venerable Mahakasyapa. When the Buddha later entered parinirvana, Mahakasyapa remained in meditative absorption at Kukutapadagiri. When Maitreya Buddha appears, Maitreya Buddha will hold Mahakasyapa's remains in his hand. He will then tell all beings among his first gathering of followers, this is Venerable Mahakasyapa from the time of Shakyamuni Buddha. He has been in meditative absorption for all these years. The Dharma robe he is wearing is the robe given to him by the Buddha at that time. He has remained in the cessation absorption with an undecayed body. Now he emerges from absorption to turn the Dharma wheel for everyone. Later he began to turn the Dharma wheel according to this story. I have mentioned this before. So for such a great Venerable Mahakasyapa, actually, he was one of the 7 great lineage holders after the Buddha's parinirvana. When the Buddha passed into parinirvana, the Dharma was entrusted to Venerable Mahakasyapa. Venerable Mahakasyapa then transmitted it to Venerable Ananda. That is how it has been passed down. In the history of Tibetan Buddhism, when we discussed the lineage earlier, according to the exoteric perspective, it is recognized as one of the 7 great lineages. At that time, the Buddha told Venerable Mahakasyapa, as a practitioner of my future lineage, it should not be a problem for you to go. Please represent me by visiting Vimalakirti to inquire after his illness. Go and see him and check on his well-being. Venerable Mahakasyapa also said to the Buddha, World-honored one, I feel the same as the others. Therefore, I also do not dare to visit Vimalakirti to inquire after his illness. What is the reason for this? I recall that a long time ago, I once went to stay among some poor people, seeking alms in a village of the impoverished. At that time, Vimalakirti approached me. He began to reprimand me, saying, O Mahakasyapa, you have the mind of sympathy and compassion but are unable to apply it universally. You have abandoned the wealthy to beg from the poor. At that time, he spoke to me in a very respectful tone. Greetings, Mahakasyapa. Hello, Mahakasyapa. Mahakasyapa, you possess great compassion. You act out of concern for the poor, but this compassion of yours is not extended universally to all sentient beings. It contains a certain bias. The Tibetan version explains it in this way as well. He said your compassion was biased, because although he felt for the poor, he likely could not tolerate the wealthy. Some practitioners who practice quite well nowadays feel that wealthy people might create obstacles for their spiritual practice. They think, I will only guide my own kind of people. Some practitioners in our community are living through very difficult and austere conditions. Upon hearing that there are wealthy people or officials nearby, they immediately run far away. Some practitioners act this way. Perhaps sharing a similar mindset with Venerable Mahakasyapa, Many people think, wow, this master is excellent. He does not care for money, so he is especially good. But actually, from the perspective of Mahayana conduct, this is still a form of discrimination. The point here is that your compassion is not universal. It is still biased. Why? It is because you have abandoned the wealthy. You cannot tolerate these wealthy people, so you cast them aside. You never enter the homes of the rich, and you always go to the poor to beg for food. This practice is not very good. This situation might still exist today. Indeed, in some Chinese Buddhism or Theravada traditions, and even in Tibetan Buddhism, there are practitioners like this. Mainly those in the Vinaya tradition still emphasize dressing in a very specific way. Some monasteries insist that clothing cannot have the slightest shine. The clothing they wear is boiled in water countless times until all the color has faded. The color becomes a very dull shade of gray. The color is especially faint. If the clothing has even a slight sheen, the abbot becomes particularly displeased. He might say, look at what you're wearing. You look like a wealthy person. In some monasteries, the abbot is very strict. He requires everyone to dress and eat as simply as possible. There is no salt or anything similar, and the clothes are the same. Even their speech follows this pattern. But it is hard to say whether the heart truly matches that appearance. Body, speech, and mind must all be in harmony. However, Vimalakirti may not be particularly pleased with such practitioners. He says that acting in this way, actually, whether someone is poor or wealthy, they should still be treated with a mind of equality. Why is that? The following section explains, Kasyapa, while abiding in the Dharma of universal sameness, you should proceed in sequence in your begging. You should not be so attached. You should abide in equality whether people are poor or wealthy, noble or humble, good or bad, or associated with light or dark. All these should be viewed within equality. In their essential nature, there is no difference. They are all exactly the same. Therefore, one should go in sequence to seek alms, regardless of whether you encounter wealthy people or poor people. When begging for food, do not be so discriminating. In reality, some people truly have cultivated their hearts much better. They do not especially grasp at many things. Especially if you have no self-interest, your conduct becomes very relaxed. No matter what happens, such a person will not particularly mind. While one may be pursuing a kind of perfection, striving to be too perfect can actually reveal many flaws within. It leads to a lack of ease. It becomes unequal and unreasonable. The point here is that in our own process of study, I hope many of us will not focus solely on outward appearances. Instead, we should reflect and practice internally. There are many profound pith instructions for one's practice. Perhaps in our ordinary conduct we do indeed consider ourselves to be acting in accord with the Dharma. However, if measured by higher level requirements, some practitioners, even from the exoteric perspective, may still be falling into an extreme form of attachment in some areas. So at that time, Vimalakirti said, you should proceed in sequence in your begging, because in a state of equality, there is in reality no true difference between people. The Bodhisattva Precept Sutra says, toward all beings, the mind is completely equal, with no distinction of noble or lowly, high or low. For all beings, the mind should remain completely equal, whether considering emptiness or luminosity, what the worldly consider as poor and humble, high or low, noble or inferior. These distinctions are really unnecessary, even within this world. Someone might be poor this year, but next year they might become wealthy. It is like the saying, 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, right? Yes, 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river. Perhaps now that time has shortened to just 3 years. Because in the old days, the Yellow River would change its course roughly every 30 years. For the wealthy and the poor, it might have taken 30 years to see such changes. But nowadays, when the stock market crashes, it might not even take 3 days. So what I just said is not wrong. Now, within 3 days, some people can become rich overnight. In just 3 hours, it can happen. Recently, some people bought lottery tickets, won a lot of money, and were overjoyed. They thought, oh, what shall I do? I have ascended to heaven. So in 3 hours, one becomes a wealthy person. And then in another 3 hours, they might become poor again. Previously, everyone treated you especially well. So when it comes to being poor or wealthy, we cannot say that our only students are the poor. This kind of thinking is also a form of attachment. On the surface, most of us, especially here in mainland, feel that when we see someone dressed in rags, you are a good monk, you are doing very well. But if someone dresses relatively well, People say that is no good for various reasons. But in reality, if there is true realization within the heart, then the outward appearance does not matter. If there is no realization in the heart, no matter how tattered your clothing is, your ego grasping has not diminished in the slightest. That might not be very good either. Therefore, one should proceed in sequence in your begging. It is because of not eating that you should practice begging. In some commentaries, the term not eating, along with breaking the union and non-reception, are all explained as nirvana. The meaning is that when attaining the state of nirvana, one no longer relies on food to sustain one's life. In this way, for the sake of attaining nirvana, one should practice begging for alms. We nourish the Dharma body and beg for alms to attain nirvana. Vimalakirti is telling Venerable Kasyapa that when seeking donations and begging for alms, one should not think, I want to eat a bit better today. Do not think about nourishing your physical body. You are doing this to attain nirvana. Relying on this composite body, I appear to beg for alms today, but in reality, I am doing so to attain the fruition of non-abiding nirvana. One should think in this way. So his reprimand was indeed meaningful. Also, to destroy the appearance of composite union, accept the lump food. Here, composite union refers to the false union of the 5 aggregates, which essentially means the body. For the sake of destroying this composite union, since the 5 aggregates are a false union, we should break through this sign of attachment. To destroy the false union of the 5 aggregates, or the body, including our flesh, bones, skin, and tendons, which make up this composite union, we use practice to break through ego grasping. For this reason, one accepts the lump food. Some explain lump food as section food. This means eating section by section or segment by segment. We eat in stages such as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It is divided into segments like this. The way humans eat is a little different from how other beings eat. For example, cattle and sheep will keep eating whenever they have the chance. This is truly how it is. You may not have herded cattle before, but I used to always ponder this matter. I thought that if they eat all day like that, then how is it that we only eat 3 meals? Some of our Dharma friends eat very slowly, while others eat quite quickly. Those who eat quickly can finish their meal in 5 or 6 minutes. Regarding this lump food or chwai food, some explanations suggest that it refers to how people in India knead food with their hands while eating, much like Tibetans eating tsampa. There is also that kind of explanation. This means that we should accept food for the sake of attaining nirvana. This is also a vital instruction. It also says it is because of not receiving that you should receive that food, neither for the subject and object of grasping, nor for the subject and object of reception, but rather for the sake of the threefold emptiness. It is not that everything is done just to obtain something, such as obtaining things from a patron. It is not like that. Ultimately, one receives offerings while attaining the state of threefold emptiness. So here, regarding the basic conditions for human survival, the ancients used to say, food, drink, and relationships are the great desires of humanity. This means that the basic elements of our survival are eating, drinking, relationships, and even birth and death. I believe this teaching comes from the Book of Rites. Many things today, including some films, use underlying themes that are basically about eating and drinking, emotional relationships, or life and death. Of course, the profound meaning of life and death is something that many people probably do not dare to bring up. It is rarely discussed. In reality, the things human existence cares about and lives for are mainly these 3 things. Therefore, at that time, the layman Vimalakirti mainly discussed how one should receive food and drink. When we eat in the future, if we truly have some level of realization, on one hand, we are nourishing this physical body for the sake of practice and to benefit beings. In this case, as some ascetics do, eating and drinking nothing all day is actually not reasonable. Just as the 400 stanzas on the middle way says, we should indeed regard the body as an enemy at times, but for the sake of practice, one must always protect and take care of it. This is very important. Otherwise, some modern ascetics torment the body all day long. This is also unreasonable, but one also cannot be too attached to it. So we must break through the false appearance of the composite union. Our body is truly a false composite appearance. Sometimes I look at this matter in a fairly detached way. Regarding whatever happens to the body, I sometimes think that for the sake of transmitting the Dharma, it is fine to live a bit longer. Beyond this, no matter what happens, even if getting injections is painful, my attachment to it is quite low. Dying is fine, and not dying is also fine. Perhaps this is what Mipham Rinpoche described as the conduct of one who is shameless. Perhaps it is not quite like that. But truly, through studying Mahayana Buddhism, one learns what the body is really like. One can say that they have seen through it. One is already able to discern its true nature. Once you recognize its true nature, being overly attached to it serves no purpose. For instance, if a friend of mine is especially bad, that person is very terrible. Being overly attached to them serves no purpose. I already know what that person is really like. Our bodies are also like this. We know what kind of things compose them, how long they can be sustained, and we are well aware of this in our hearts. So when each person receives food, they do so to destroy the appearance of composite union. One receives it for the sake of non-reception, right? You should enter a village with the idea that it is an empty aggregation. When entering a city, one should not go with excessive attachment. Instead, one should think of the city as being empty, selfless, and impermanent, whether from the perspective of its essence or impermanence. Therefore, when we enter a city, we should not be especially attached to it. In the Tang Dynasty translation, the idea that it is an empty aggregation is one point. Also, when entering a city, one should think of it as impermanent and empty. The Tibetan version seems to have this as well. This includes men and women, though there is a slight difference. When we see or encounter men and women, they are also in reality empty and impermanent. Think in this way. The Tibetan version seems to contain this too. So when going to cities or villages, one should have the perception of an empty gathering. One should not be especially attached. Some practitioners who have practiced for a long time in the mountains or peaceful places and then go to a small city become overjoyed thinking, wow, this place is amazing. When some of our Dharma friends hold a Dharma assembly here and then return to Barkham or Luhuo to take a bath, they say, wow, our hometown is so comfortable. It was so hard living in that place in the Tibetan region. I will never go back there again. Instead of seeing the city as empty, they feel it is especially beautiful and wonderful. I believe that when Venerable Kasyapa entered a city, he certainly maintained a state of emptiness. Then, regarding some of our Dharma friends who have practiced in peaceful mountains for a very long time, some are genuinely doing well, but some are also too extreme. After arriving in the city, they do not want to see anyone. They just diligently recite mantras to themselves. In other people's eyes, they seem like very strange people. Actually, at that time, even if you have the internal realization of suffering, emptiness, and selflessness, you should outwardly adapt a little. Because after all, you have come out from the mountains. So when you come out, you should wash your clothes so they are fairly clean. Regarding your speech and behavior, your mind can remain in the fourth meditative concentration. But on the manifest level, you should adapt to people a little. This is quite important. Now, some of our Dharma friends here are doing fine. This summer, I see that all of you are dressed quite well. This year is the only time I have been fairly satisfied. Of course, this may be because the spoken examination class is seated in front. Perhaps that is the reason. They are all quite young. Also, for the oral examination, they must appear before many people, so everyone still has some concerns. If Venerable Kasyapa were to appear before many people on camera, he might also act like this. Next, we will discuss the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the six sense faculties. Regarding form dharmas seen by the eyes, do not grasp at them. Do not say, this is beautiful or this is ugly. Just as a blind person perceives form dharmas, everything is completely equal. They have no possibility of discrimination. It should be like that. For Venerable Kasyapa, regarding form dharmas, sounds heard by the ears are also like an echo in an empty valley. An echo in an empty valley cannot bring joy, anger, or hatred to others. That is not possible. It is simply an appearance, merely a reflection. So you should not take the sounds you hear to heart. Then for scent smelled by the nose, the word scent here does not mean exquisite fragrance. It refers to all kinds of smells. Whether it is a pleasant smell or an unpleasant one, Any scent you detect should be treated like the wind. The wind does not hold on to anything. It vanishes in a very short time. It does not preserve anything. Actually, these teachings are present in some of our Dzogchen practices. Everything pleasant or unpleasant that appears before your sixth sense faculties, you are allowed to experience all of it. For instance, in empowerments in the past on the body, there were some when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche gave empowerments, he would play especially beautiful music from a radio and then play especially unpleasant music. He would have us observe these two and ask, what did I just hear? Then he would place rough burlap cloth on the body and then place especially soft silk on the body, like celestial clothing. Then you sense the difference and observe. This includes sometimes smelling the fragrance of roses, just as we are doing right now. In a short while, he would bring over some garbage to smell. We think that one is very good and the other is not. But wait and see, what is the true nature really like? Actually, they are completely equal. This also occurs in some modern mindfulness meditations. They are somewhat approaching Mahayana emptiness. Many people feel, wow, this is especially wonderful. There is a meditation retreat we must attend. A person pays 50,000 yuan for 7 days, 60,000 yuan or 30,000 yuan. No problem, no problem. But actually, these pith instructions are available in Mahayana Buddhism. No need to pay. They can be taught to you for free. Yes, paying that much money is not very useful. You can read the books yourself and rest in awareness a little. There is much in the tantric teachings as well. There is also much in the Mahayana teachings. Everything acquired by our sixth sense faculties all arise from conceptual thoughts. Ultimately, they bring hatred, suffering, joy, and happiness to oneself. Regarding flavors tasted by the tongue, whether they are delicious or unpleasant, do not use conceptual thoughts to discriminate among them. Do not say that this is very delicious or this is very unpleasant. In some of their meditation practices, they have people take something spicy, salty, or sweet, and chew it gradually in their mouths, slowly tasting all the different flavors. In the end, what was it exactly that they ate? Many Westerners who were originally quite picky found that after practicing this meditation, wow, it turns out that if I go step by step, perhaps repeating the process several times or even more than 10 times, they feel, wow, it turns out. Am I perhaps speaking too fast? In this way, you can sometimes sense that what we ordinarily consider delicious or beautiful, pleasing to hear or pleasant to touch, these things are all based on our conceptual thoughts. Of course, regarding the pointing out instructions of the nature of mind in Dzogchen, there is no need for any other approach to lead you there in a roundabout way. It is told to you directly. Those who have studied the tantric teachings already know this. Actually, all paths lead to the same destination. The paths may be different, but when ultimately recognizing the nature of mind, they are basically the same. This is what the tongue faculty obtained as flavor. Then, regarding tactile sensations felt by the body, these are like the wisdom of realizing emptiness. Because whatever the body makes contact with, whether soft or rough, light or heavy, pleasant or unpleasant, these only temporarily appear before your conceptual thoughts. But in reality, for instance, when I look at people with tattoos, they seem to feel that in order to achieve their own purpose, no matter how they are tattooed, they do not seem to feel pain. This has a lot to do with our sense of values, doesn't it? This is the sensation. The nature of all dharmas known to mental consciousness is completely like a dream, an illusion, or a heat mirage. There is no true reality in them. So why is there no true reality? Below it says, no self-nature, no other nature, originally not arising and now not ceasing. What does this mean? All dharmas known to consciousness, including the six sense consciousnesses we just mentioned, are like illusions and dreams in their appearance. In reality, when examining from the ultimate perspective, they should be without self-nature. They do not arise from their own self-nature. They are without other nature, not arising from another substance. Without self-nature and without other nature, then co-arising is certainly impossible. Beyond this, arising from no cause is also impossible. We do not know whether this has been taught here before. The root stanzas of the Middle Way says, Dharmas do not arise from self, nor from other, nor from both, nor without cause. Therefore, know that all dharmas are unborn. This is the most important verse in the first chapter. In summary, all phenomena do not arise from self. They do not arise from other, nor do they co-arise. They do not arise from no cause. So all phenomena can be called unborn. All phenomena are unborn. Everyone here should know this. If we truly examine all phenomena using the Madhyamaka method, they cannot be found. If they cannot be found, their own nature has not blazed up from the start. The character Ran in Buran has the fire radical, meaning to burn. If arising from self, other, co-arising, or no cause are all absent, it is impossible for anything to blaze up. Blazing is like fire. Some commentaries say that where there is fire, there is burning. Because there is burning, it will also be extinguished. But all phenomena lack these four kinds of arising. Without these four kinds of arising, it is impossible to have a blazing forth or an arising like fire. If there is no arising, there cannot be cessation. Because for all cessation, arising must come first, followed by cessation. So regarding the fuel and the fire, the 10th chapter of the root stanzas of the Middle Way is a dedicated chapter on examining the fuel and the fire. It refers to the investigation of the relationship between fire and firewood. On the conventional level, we know that fire is used to burn firewood. But in reality, when examined with wisdom, the fuel and the fire, or fire and firewood, are merely conventional designations. By the same logic, all phenomena through our six sense faculties, including the mental faculty, should be found to be non-existent when we examine the contact between sense faculties and objects. You should not be able to find them. Actually, this should align very well with our tantric teachings. In many places, they are very similar. Therefore, some of you may not want to do the preliminary practices this time, and you may not be able to receive any genuine empowerment. But there are still some who want to seek the tantric teachings, those rather lazy, great accomplished ones. This Vimalakirti Sutra is still useful for you, as it is essentially the same as the tantric teachings. If you cannot receive the tantric teachings, it does not matter. If you have no faith, it is basically just this and no more. However, in many Western situations, people practice without empowerments or preliminary practices. Some masters or teachers will teach the students directly, and this sort of thing does happen. But I feel that this is not in accord with the Dharma. Last year, when I was at a school, I spoke my mind quite frankly. I said we had better not try to reform things. Even the lineage masters do not have the authority to reform the teachings. These dharmas come directly from the lineage masters. If our teachers did not have this wisdom, it would not have been possible. So for those of us who come later, if we want to propagate or study Buddhism, it is best to do so properly and in accord with the Dharma. We should look at how Jigme Lingpa and Longchenpa practiced their preliminary practices and how they received their empowerments. In the future, we should still strive to respect the transmission of the tantric teachings. Regarding this point, many Buddhist practitioners in the Han region are doing very well. Step by step, everyone is studying and reflecting in an orderly way. Some may have given up midway due to work or lack of time, but for the majority, this sincere effort is something we must acknowledge. Even in the Tibetan region, many monasteries with strict masters still maintain a very rigorous transmission. This is probably for the best. What we call openness does not mean being without structure or principles. True freedom is not just doing whatever one thinks. If doing whatever one thinks were true freedom, then a madman would be the freest person of all. The madmen of the world would be the most free, but their speech may not necessarily earn the respect of the world. Coming back to our topic, we must finish this section today. It looks like we can manage it. Next, the text mentions Venerable Kasyapa. Kasyapa, if you are able to enter the 8 emancipations without renouncing the 8 perversions, using the characteristic of perversion to enter into the correct Dharma is a profound idea. The layman Vimalakirti continues to tell Venerable Kasyapa that if you can avoid abandoning the 8 wrongs, which are the opposites of the Noble Eightfold Path, such as wrong view and wrong thought, wrong speech, wrong action, and wrong livelihood, these 8 kinds of wrongness. According to the Sravaka tradition, one must abandon these 8 wrongs to enter the 8 liberations or the Noble Eightfold Path. These two are sometimes grouped together and sometimes separated. When we speak of the 8 liberations, it means entering the correct Dharma through the appearance of wrongness. In the Sravaka tradition, you must enter right view only after eliminating wrong view. You enter right livelihood only after eliminating wrong livelihood. But according to the special view of the Mahayana, even while you are in the midst of wrong view, right view is right there within it. This is how you enter. This is an extremely special teaching. In terms of their essential nature, there is actually no difference between wrong view and right view. I recall it is said in a scripture called the Dharani of the Guardian of the Nation Sutra that good and non-good are essentially the same. It says that worldly and world-transcending dharmas are equal, and good and non-good dharmas are equal to nirvana. Worldly and world-transcending dharmas, just as the root stanzas of the middle way states, have not even the slightest difference between them. On the surface, good and non-good, such as the 10 non-virtues and the 10 virtues, cannot possibly be equal. But at the ultimate level of nirvana, they are completely equal. So in certain areas, the Mahayana teachings surpass the principles of the Buddhism of humans and celestials. As Buddhists, we need to understand the Dharma at a deeper level. Otherwise, if we only talk about simple human and celestial Buddhism, or things that the secular world discusses every day, we may not have truly entered into Buddhist wisdom. So why is it expressed in this way here? In the Sravaka tradition, no one would ever say this about the Noble Eightfold Path. To them, wrong view is just wrong view. You cannot possibly attain Buddhahood right then and there while holding wrong views and using a single meal to give to all, making offerings to the Buddhas and the assembly of worthies and sages. Because of the mind of equality mentioned earlier, one begs for alms and eats with this same equality. In such a moment, if we accept the food of patrons with a mind of equality, you are actually giving to all pitiable beings. You are also simultaneously making offerings to all the Buddhas of the 3 times, and the noble bodhisattvas from the 1st to the 10th bhumi. This can then be called true alms begging and true food. If you lack this state of realization or mind of equality, it is not the same. The critical word here is mind of equality. Actually, in this chapter, the pith instruction for Venerable Mahakasyapa is mainly about the mind of equality. This is what everyone should remember. The lesson for him is that we must maintain equality between samsara and nirvana. We must also see ordinary beings and noble ones as equal. Everything, whether pure or impure, must be treated with equality. In their essential nature, all things are equal. This is just like what we say in Dzogchen, which is the self-liberation of equanimity. We already taught this in a tantric class 2 years ago. It was the self-liberation of the nature of phenomena and the self-liberation of equanimity. Originally, regarding this self-liberation of equanimity, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche taught this Dharma at the Buddhist Lodge in Singapore in 1995. So the main point discussed here, if we go a bit deeper, would be the principles of the self-liberation of equanimity. For a person who eats or begs for alms with such a mind of equality, it is a state of neither to have the afflictions nor to transcend the afflictions. Having no afflictions does not mean what is taught in the Sravaka tradition. It is not like worldly people who have afflictions or those who have eliminated them. It is not that either. It also does not mean just being free from afflictions. In the Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha traditions, they believe that being free from afflictions is the ultimate fruition. They think all craving, aversion, and delusion are eliminated. But it is not like that here, because both of those views are considered extremes. Worldly people believe that afflictions truly exist, but actually the nature of afflictions does not exist. Then Sravaka practitioners believe afflictions do not exist, so they become attached to a single point of emptiness. This is also unreasonable. So what is the ultimate thought of the Mahayana? Actually, in the true essential nature, it is neither having afflictions nor not having them. It is neither of these two, nor is it beyond them. In this way, the ultimate truth is free from conceptual elaboration. The conventional truth is simply like dreams and illusions. This is the most ultimate view. Similarly, one is neither in meditative absorption nor arising from meditative absorption. When accepting food, one does not rely on being in a state of meditative absorption to eat. Yet it is also not that one is simply not in meditation, acting in the manner of having arisen from absorption. For us ordinary worldly people, we eat all our meals while arisen from meditation, right? Everything is eaten in a state of non-absorption. The Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas abide in a certain state of Chan. But both of these are extremes. It is not just about abiding in this world like a worldly person, nor is it like the Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas who abide in a quiescent nirvana. Both of these are unreasonable. Also, when one knows with this mind of equality, there is no such thing as great or small merit for the donor, because the recipient has fully realized equality. From the perspective of the donor, it is not about saying, I offered something big, so I have great merit, or I offered something small, so I have small merit. In the Tibetan version, it also says, there is no middle merit and no special merit, which may be an extension of this same idea. If you understand the mind of equality, there is no benefit or harm. Benefit refers to superimposition, where you believe something exists when it originally does not. For instance, the eye does not exist, but if you believe it does, this is a kind of superimposition. Harm refers to diminishment. It is believing something does not exist when it actually does. For example, if someone has pure precepts, but you slander them by saying they do not, that is a form of diminishment. So from the perspective of the donor we just mentioned, great, small, middle, or special merit, as well as superimposition and diminishment, cannot exist when one understands the view of equality. This is the correct entry into the path of Buddhahood without relying on the Shravaka vehicle. To correctly enter the Buddha's path, one does not rely on the Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha traditions. Kashyapa, if you can eat according to this understanding, then you will not render void the charity of those who feed you. If you truly have this mind of equality, you will not waste the food offered by the patron. If we have no correct view at all, even with pure precepts, success is not guaranteed. Sometimes offerings given out of faith can be quite daunting. In the Han region, people often say that such offerings are hard to digest. Food offered by the faithful is difficult to process. That saying exists for a reason. The key is that if you have the view of equality and emptiness, then no matter how much food you consume, there is no cause for worry. But if one has no view and one's conduct is not in accord with the Dharma, in that case, a single grain of rice from the Buddha's monastery is as vast as Mount Meru. This is a common saying in our tradition. If one does not realize the path in this life, one returns wearing fur and horns. There is such a saying as well. The food provided by the monastery is not a simple matter. Even a single grain of rice is considered as vast as Mount Meru. Actually, if we do not practice diligently in this present life and fail to properly understand the teachings, and if we have not realized the state of emptiness in accordance with the Dharma, then we might have to repay that debt in the body of an animal in the next life. This is a very frightening thought. So back then, the layman Vimalakirti told Kashyapa that if he could maintain that view, he would not consume offerings in vain. This is truly the authentic Mahayana method. For seeking donations and begging for alms, it is because you possess the non-dual view, Venerable Kashyapa said. At that time, world-honored one, when I heard those words, I felt that this teaching was extremely rare. When the layman Vimalakirti spoke to him like this, he was deeply impressed by its rarity. From that moment forward, he developed profound faith and respect for all bodhisattvas. Before that, he might have been a bit different, because in the Shravaka tradition, practitioners sometimes struggle to develop faith in tantric teachings or certain other concepts. There are some who just cannot find that faith. But once one truly understands the ultimate view, one naturally develops faith in it. You see, Venerable Kashyapa was already such an outstanding figure. Yet, he was deeply moved by just one session with this layman. Actually, what was taught in this session was quite simple. But after hearing it, Venerable Kashyapa developed great faith in this elderly, sick layman. At that time, he thought to himself, this old fellow is truly remarkable for a layman. Om Vajrasattva Hum. Actually, one should not speak of him so casually. Someone had asked, who was this old sick person? But his eloquence and wisdom were truly like this. A wise person only needs to hear one lesson to understand. Venerable Kashyapa is still very formidable. Upon hearing the words I mentioned above, perhaps we might listen to the same lesson and feel nothing at all. We might think, what was that? It seemed quite ordinary. Some people might say that. But Kashyapa recognized Vimalakirti's wisdom. Even though Vimalakirti was a layman and Kashyapa was the foremost in ascetic practices, Kashyapa still saw how outstanding he was. Vimalakirti's wisdom and eloquence truly captivated Kashyapa in just one session. It completely won him over. Sometimes life is like that. For example, after attending a single lecture, your attitude toward the speaker can change completely. When we attend seminars or talks, if someone gives an especially brilliant presentation, many people will flock to them afterward for an autograph. I have experienced this feeling myself. At symposiums, if someone's talk is particularly poor, no one wants to talk to them afterward. But if someone speaks exceptionally well, you think, wow, this person is truly formidable. The positive impression of that person stays with you simply because they spoke so well. So Kashyapa thought, how could anyone who hears him not generate the intention to achieve Anuttara Samya Sambodhi? He said, from that time onward, I never again encouraged anyone to pursue the Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha paths. he stopped leading people toward those paths. Instead, from then on, he focused on praising and upholding the Mahayana. Sravakas are like stars, while bodhisattvas are like the full moon. Out of compassion for beings, they manifest the path of nirvana. In the Maharatnakura Sutra, there are many discussions on the differences between the Mahayana and the Hinayana. For example, the clusters of stars in the night sky cannot dispel the darkness, but the full moon of a bodhisattva can completely eliminate the darkness. Because bodhisattvas feel compassion for all beings, they frequently manifest the path of nirvana. Regarding this path of nirvana, nirvana does not only mean passing away. It has many different layers of meaning. It can mean realization, accomplishment, or wisdom. Bodhisattvas manifest various world-transcending paths, specifically for the benefit of all beings. So Venerable Kasyapa, even though he was part of the Shravaka tradition, he knew it would be a problem if he did not introduce Vimalakirti. You can see that from that point on, he placed his emphasis on propagating the Mahayana rather than the Hinayana. Therefore, I cannot accept your instruction to go inquire about his illness. This Dharma is very interesting. I think many people who study the Vimalakirti Sutra will find new awakenings and a deeper understanding of Mahayana Madhyamaka thought.
Bandara Bandara